Hi, I'm WTOP film critic Jason Fraley, and all month long we are ranking the best movies in every genre, one a day for 30 different genres, 30 days. And today we're going to talk about courtroom movies. Of all the genres, this one had a lot of quotable lines. I think of And Justice for All, when Al Pacino says, "You're out of order, you're out of order, and this whole courtroom's out of order." I mean, we've heard that quoted a million times. We also get Meryl Streep, A Cry in the Dark, where she says, "The dingo ate my baby." And of course, I can't think of that without Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Seinfeld saying, "Maybe the dingo ate your baby." So there's a Seinfeld reference. Hey, just like in Friends, Joey Tribbiani says, "You're out of order, you're out of order." So there you go. There's your pop culture tie-in. But of course, the most quotable one, A Few Good Men, when Tom Cruise gets Jack Nicholson to out himself at the very end of the trial by saying, "You can't handle the truth." And then he says, "You're darn right I ordered the code red." I mean, come on. A Few Good Men is so great. And actually was Aaron Sorkin's debut script, Rob Reiner directing. But Sorkin went on, let's say, to have a decent career after that. Now, when you think courtroom flicks, you think of the courtroom drama. It's kind of in the title. But I also wanted to include some courtroom comedies. Yeah, there are a few, actually. Movies like My Cousin Vinny, What's a Ute? There's Adam's Rib, which is my favorite of all the Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy movies. Of course, they were lovers in real life and made, a good handful to half dozen movies together. And oh my God, this one is easily their best. They're two lawyers going at it in one of the greatest romantic comedies, but I snuck it in here. I included Legally Blonde because, Reese Witherspoon, one of her most iconic roles, going to law school and ends in a trial. I put it in here. And then, of course, my little guilty pleasure, The Three Stooges in Disorder in the Court. It's a short film, but I crack up, especially the part where Curly has to put his hand on the Bible, but he has to take his hat off. The guy says, "Take your hat off," so he takes his hat off, and he says, "Put your hand on the Bible," so he puts the hat back on. And it just goes around and around. The antics they cause in there are hilarious, and who doesn't love The Three Stooges? I think it's their best. They made a ton of shorts, dozens and dozens, but to me, check out Disorder in the Court. All right, well, that was the comedies, but of course, most courtroom dramas are dramatic and deal with big social change issues. The first one that comes to mind is my favorite, To Kill a Mockingbird. Atticus Finch doing probably the most important civil rights movie of all time. This is 1960s Harper Lee's novel. The movie came out in 62. But come on, Gregory Peck in this role is iconic, defending Tom Robinson. And it ends a little bit tragically, but ultimately we get Boo Radley coming to save the day and realizing there's the two most powerful lines in that are "Hey Boo" and "Hey Mr. Cunningham." To me, I think that is when the lynch mob is outside the jail trying to get in, and Scout just diffuses it by saying, "Hey Mr. Cunningham." Think about that with Charlottesville, folks. I also included Philadelphia, which is, of course, Denzel Washington defending Tom Hanks, who has AIDS, and they're trying to say that he was fired for reasons because he was gay and because he had AIDS. The movie was way ahead of its time. It was acclaimed. Tom Hanks won Best Actor. He won again the next year for Forrest Gump. But I still don't think that it was totally appreciated as much as it should be in hindsight. If you look at the seed that was planted with that, almost like what Do the Right Thing did for race relations. I think the seed that was planted by Philadelphia in Hollywood in 1993, I think the same year that Rent was doing it on Broadway in workshops, that seed was planted and flowered that years later everyone was recognizing it for Brokeback Mountain and all these other movies. Finally gay rights is legalized at the White House. But to me, I think you can thank this movie here when Denzel says, "Let's talk about what this case is really all about, the public's fear and hatred of homosexuals." It's a way ahead of its time movie, Jonathan Demme, and to me, it has two great songs. We have the Oscar-winning Streets of Philadelphia by Bruce Springsteen, and then there's that Neil Young song, Philadelphia, that rips my heart out at the end of the movie every time. I'll say it, it's the movie that changed my mind on the subject, so there you go. We also get Loving, A Time to Kill, Inherit the Wind, which was about evolution versus creationism. And then The Accused, which was Jodie Foster's first of two Oscar wins as a rape victim, a gang rape victim, and takes them to trial and tries to prove and succeeds that even the people that weren't doing it but were sitting there cheering it should also be prosecuted. I mean, come on, this genre really has changed the world in a lot of ways, and I hope they keep making them. Now, I wanted to maintain a range of the types of court cases that are explored here. So, of course, we get the classic murder trial, like witness for the prosecution with some great twists and double twists there with Marlene Dietrich as the witness for the prosecution. And then we also get Anatomy of a Murder, another great murder trial movie with Jimmy Stewart, and it's Otto Preminger's, I think, probably his second best movie after Laura. And then, of course, but it's not just murder trials. There's military stuff, like, we talked about Guantanamo Bay with A Few Good Men, but there's also Judgment at Nuremberg, the famous trials for the Nazi war crimes after the war. And then Paths of Glory, yes, it kind of opens in the trenches of World War I, but really I'd say most of the movie, the second half and the finale, is Kirk Douglas doing the court martial and trying to get the guys off. I think then also we wanted to include more, let's say more of a domestic dispute like child custody. One of my all-time favorites, Kramer versus Kramer, Best Picture '79. It won Oscars for Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep as the ex-wife and ex-husband, and Dustin Hoffman trying to raise the kid, and they're just battling over custody. And then, of course, and this one's a little more outside the box, but I was trying to figure out where to include Kurosawa's Rashomon. And I thought, you know what? This movie is 4 different perspectives, 4 different witness testimonies on a crime that was committed, and the viewers are left to determine who was right. So I snuck it in here. So many movies were in consideration for the top slot. I know a lot of classic movie fans are going to really want it to be 12 Angry Men because Henry Fonda is so amazing. I think it's, well, that and Tom Joad in Grapes of Wrath are his 2 most iconic roles. Him as juror number 8. And the fact that it all unfolded in the back room of the case. We're only with the jurors the whole time as they're debating it. They all think he must be guilty, and then Henry Fonda pulls out the switchblade and sticks it in the table, and everyone says, oh my God. They're sweating the whole time. It becomes a heat box in there. It's just a great movie. Of course, I considered Philadelphia for reasons I already mentioned. To me, I ultimately put number 2, The Verdict. I think this is one of the most underrated great movies of all time. Everyone says it's great, but in the conversation, people don't really hold it up. But I want to hold it up and put it at number 2 because I think Paul Newman in this is so amazing. It starts with him at, the pinball machine, Sidney Lumet directing. It's like a shadowy opening. But we get to see Paul Newman. He's a scumbag at the beginning of this. He's actually going through the newspaper obituary section, circling people as potential clients, and almost like a vulture, jumping on all these, grieving families. But there is a key moment where he has a change of heart, and it builds to one of the great courtroom finales of all time. Check out Paul Newman in The Verdict, directed by Sidney Lumet, as I said, but it's written by David Mamet. Please watch it. I think it's so underrated. But of course, number 1, a movie I already mentioned, To Kill a Mockingbird. I mentioned how I love Hey Boo. I mentioned the power of Hey Mr. Cunningham and all the people on both sides of Charlottesville. No. What would Scout say? See my full top 25 courtroom movies on WTOP.com's entertainment page, and join us tomorrow as we break down my favorite crime movies.